Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show. I'm Michael.
And I'm Patty.
And I'm just getting over a flu. However, the show must go on, right, Patty?
Yes, it must. And I'm sitting in our little recording studio capsule, and I hope you don't need to cough or anything because I really don't want to get the flu that's been going around this past year.
It's been just pandemic across the country and the United States as well. We're coming to you recorded live from the Charlottetown waterfront, looking out at a very frozen Charlottetown yacht club. If you're new to the show, Patty and I bring over 4 decades of specifically Prince Edward Island real estate experience and thousands of transactions handled. And this podcast is a platform to transparently display everything that we've come across, know and experienced in PEI real estate. Anything to add before that? You might want to mention the Facebook group too.
Yeah, well, and the whole reason that we started this podcast and are sharing was it's really hard to reach the masses. And when you have so much experience and knowledge and you really just want to be able to share it, and perhaps equipped and educate buyers and sellers and, quite frankly, even other realtors or agents or salespeople considering getting in the business, this was a great option and a platform for us to do that. So it's all about giving. The other thing that you had just mentioned, Michael, that I'll share is our Facebook group. It's Moving to Prince Edward Island from the Michael and Patty podcast. It is jam-packed with information all about moving to Prince Edward Island, little snapshot summaries of every single episode so you can pick and choose which one that you want to perhaps download and listen to. Plus, we have Toolbox Tuesdays, so if you're thinking of moving in the either near future or perhaps in the next year or two, it is a great Facebook group to prepare and start your due diligence in the education process.
It's 2026 at the beginning of the year. What do real estate agents do? They reflect on the last year and all the sales they may or may not have made and what they're going to do next year to make it even better. I didn't so much as reflect on that going into almost 30 years here. Patty's into 16
years.
16 years. So we're a little past the reflecting from last year and what we did wrong, because at this point, we really don't do anything wrong at all, right? And we're both perfect.
Maybe perhaps you are, but I know I will continually grow and evolve and improve my skills every year.
Ditto. Every day is a learning opportunity, and every person and transaction you handle, there's always something that comes up that you haven't experienced before that requires some additional learning. Adds to your experience, your insight, and that's what we can share on the show here.
Yeah, and even just by doing this podcast, I have, grown as well because there's a sense of clarity, and sometimes I actually learn a nugget or two from you, Michael.
Not to mention that if you say anything wrong, our fact checker, Tricia, is going to come down on you hard.
Yes.
We do appreciate Tricia listening to each and every episode and keeping us along the straight and narrow to make sure we don't give out any misinformation knowingly.
Yes, thank you, Tricia.
Moving along. So looking back, and this is why I mentioned the new year in 2026, I'm not really reflecting on what happened last year. What I'm reflecting on is I'm looking at new agents getting into this business today, which seems to be still at a fairly high rate. Our associations taking it upon themselves to have this new fantastic revenue stream, and they're bringing in a lot of new agents, not so much now as in COVID. But I know one of the main things that I learned, and I'm going to ask you this question first, and I'll share my insight, is if I was talking to a brand new agent today, getting into real estate anywhere on planet Earth, definitely North America, because the system's pretty much the same, every province and state and territory, what is that one piece of advice I could give that agent to put them on an accelerated career path? In other words, do this or don't do this, and this will change your career exponentially by not making this mistake that I made.
And what? Do you have something specific?
Well, you're going to go first.
Oh, of course I'm going to go
So tell
first.
tell us what the best piece of advice you could give to a new agent or a piece of advice of something not to do.
Okay.
And don't steal my idea, even though you don't know what it is.
Okay. When we discussed this earlier, you kind of had a different approach. So I am going to take the approach because this is where my brain has gone. And so one of the mistakes I made when I first got into real estate, which I guess could be a lesson for a new agent getting into the business, was I assumed and trusted just because, and like we just did at the beginning of this episode, Michael, we've got over 4 decades combined experience. I assumed time in the business equated to skill set and knowledge. And I trusted those who I had looked up to and my leaders as, okay, well, because you've been in the business 20 some odd years, you must know more than I do. Therefore, I'm going to listen to everything you tell me. And I have come to learn that that is not the case at all. Time does not equate to experience and somebody offering you great advice and education. So that was one of my mistakes or assumptions when I got into the business. One of the best things that I had done when I got into the business, and again, if you're a realtor listening to this or just going to start your course, because I believe there's a course starting already for 2026.
What are the odds?
Is I went through the MLS and I was looking for high producing agents whose names were always on the cut sheets, like on their hot sheet. For those who are listening, we have almost like the stock market, new prices, new listings, new sales, conditional sales, expired cancels, and it's on our first page of our MLS system on our board. It is called Paragon for us, and it's like keeping an eye on what just came on, what just came off the market type thing, or what just went under contract. So I kept an eye on that and also pulled yearly stats. And I reached out to those agents. Now, one of those agents, and I did end up having a few conversations. Michael, I will say, and always gratitude and thank you, but you were the only one that actually responded with, when are you available in like 5-10 minutes? Because we were at that time in the same brokerage. I wasn't ready for that meeting, but you know what? It was the best thing that I could have done because I did get a lot of experience. The other best thing I could have done, which I did, I wasn't worried about taking 100% of the commission home with me. What I did was I co-listed properties. Any listing I got, I co-listed with a seasoned agent, not a brand new agent that I just took the course with, who I then could learn some of their techniques and what tools they have and what their dialogue and script were to make sure that I was on track and I was doing my job better and protecting my client. So those are my 2 big things.
So before I answer this, I just wanted to preface this by saying this question, in fact, all these questions, well, this question specifically wasn't pre-rehearsed. I added this to the list about an hour ago. It just came to my mind behind the computer before I headed out to pick up Patty and put her in our mobile studio. And none of these questions are pre-rehearsed. I basically typed them up a week or 2 ago, and I'll look at them this morning real quick. There's no real point forms. It's basically, here's the topic, and we're doing it in a Larry David way, how he did Seinfeld, which was what's the word for it?
Improv.
Improv. So that's what we're doing. And if we appear like we're unrehearsed, that's because we want to be completely transparent. We also don't want to spend 50 hours and have 200 employees putting together a podcast for real estate.
Yeah, and it also is, we're more genuine and authentic, which is why we need Trisha Campbell sometimes to come in and make sure we didn't go down a tangent or rabbit trail that wasn't correct. Can I add to my list, please? Because,
no,
the other
it says
thing
here, no adding to the list.
Okay. So if I'm going to advise a new agent getting their license, education, I sought out because within about 2 years, I realized those who I was trying to acquire information, and realtors don't like sharing. They think they've got the big secret and they're worried that if they give that secret out to someone, they're actually going to do something with it. So they don't like sharing much. So I ended up seeking out education, third-party education, and one of the best organizations I became a part of is one in the States. So I have my designation, my CRS designation, and that is not an easy designation. It's not just a one course and you get your little certificate. That was something that I cannot stress enough is go look for third-party education. Don't just trust on your board or association or providing you the best. And even after I've been in the business for 8 years, I sought out a real estate coaching company who transformed my business. I thought I was Powerhouse Patty and a big deal. Apparently I wasn't. I could not believe how much I learned and how I grew and developed as a realtor as a result of hiring this real estate coaching company after 8 years being in the business, Michael.
But having said that, with all due respect to you, you ended up actually spending 5 figures on this education. It's hard getting $20 out of an agent for a birthday gift. Do you think they're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on their education? No, because they don't see the return, because a lot of them don't come from a business background. People that come from a business background realize I need to invest in my education. I need to invest in my marketing, and it's going to show a return. But not many agents are going to spend tens of thousands of dollars and spend years training under a trainer, because you were trained for
3 years.
For 3 years. This wasn't, a lot of the brokerages, the agents will complain, well, you don't do any training. You don't do any training. So what do? They bring in somebody or they do a Zoom meeting for a week and there's your training. See you in another 12 or 14 years, right? That's the reality of it.
Yes.
So ironically enough, my advice is exactly the same as what Patty said, but basically in one sentence. Don't follow people that don't know what they're doing. And just because someone's been doing something for 10, 20, 30, 40 years doesn't mean they've been doing it right. And it reminds me of a friend that was an industrial carpenter in Ontario, which has since passed away. And he was a carpenter for a long time, and he was very much a perfectionist at what he did. He knew what he did. He was educated as a carpenter, and he noticed an older carpenter doing something wrong when they're putting these forms together for a shopping mall they're building. And he said, what you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't be doing it that way. Of course, this guy's response was, well, I've been doing it like this for 40 years. My friend said, well, you've been doing it effing wrong.
For 40 years.
Just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you're good at it. You've been flying by the seat of your pants from day one. You're probably still doing it today. And the only thing that's been propelling your career has probably been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is probably their social connections.
Perhaps. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or whatever, the Good Buddy Network. But when it comes to actually the raw fundamentals of running a business, it's not there. The other thing that I found that was really annoying, and I don't know about you, and this happens today, you hear it all the time when agents are quoting prices they pulled out of their ass, and there's no scientific, factual data to validate anything they're saying.
No, they typically will throw out some cut sheets and ask the seller what they want, and that becomes the price.
A good example of that is they'll look at a building lot, and they'll say, oh, that building lot's got to be worth $150,000. You go back, you check the stats on MLS, there hasn't been a building lot in that subdivision in 25 years that sold for more than 45. So where does this number come from?
Well, exactly. And now you just set that seller up for failure.
So our advice is do not follow people that do not know what they're doing. All you're doing is replicating deficiencies. Get education. Get off your ass. Get on the plane. If you need to fly out for education, Patty and I have flown to Texas, Florida, California, actually Texas multiple times, Florida, Nevada, Ontario, New Brunswick. That's part of California.
Okay.
It's very nice, by the way.
It is. It was.
Nova Scotia, and of course, PEI. Thousands of dollars spent in education, but for every penny you spend, you'll get 50 cents back or more.
Yeah, and
you'll make the business a lot less stressful, and you'll actually know what you're doing, so you're not out there showing building lots at 10 o'clock at night with a flashlight thinking that that's the way the business is done because your mentor that's been doing this for 50 years, flying by the seat of his pants, does the same thing.
So as much as spending the money to seek out the education is something that unfortunately, especially in real estate, we just don't have a real estate university or college. And this is something that as realtors, we are if we really want to master this profession and, better represent and serve our clients, we have no choice but as to do. So to function at that higher level, that is just something that unfortunately we have to find ourselves as this education and training. It's not just about spending the money, though. It's actually about implementing the skills or the tools that you've learned. It's like paying for a gym membership and then never showing up at the gym. It's easy to pay the money, the funds, whatever the cost of the gym membership is, but now you have to do the work. You have to show up and actually sweat and show up on it, whether it's a daily or 3 times a week basis. The work that's involved to achieve your goal, which the money was put out in the first place for, now relies on hard work and dedication and commitment. It's no different than the education. I can spend 5-6 figures on education, but if I'm not going to implement at least 1 to 3 new things that I've learned from my training every year, I'm not going to grow and evolve as a realtor.
Absolutely. Let's end this rant. And, if you are a buyer or a seller of real estate, keep this in mind. Don't be dealing with an agent that's flying by the seat of the pants. And also, do not allow a buyer, if you're listing your property for sale, to buy your listing by promising you some big made-up number that's never going to happen. We looked at a house yesterday that Patty went into. She was interviewed. She shared, and this is instrumental, she shared factual data as to what the market was saying this house was worth. And this house, according to the market, was worth about 5.25. Is that correct?
Yep.
I looked at this house. I did my CMA, comprehensive market analysis, which, as we know from listening to the podcast, is similar to an appraisal. I came up with 5.25. I came up with the same dollar amount to the nickel because it was an easy house to put a value on. But when I looked at the history of the house, because they opted not to use Patty because she didn't tell the sellers what they wanted to hear, which was the house was worth $850 or $800.
They were about $250,000 above is what they ended up listing it for than what the market value. And again, using my pricing intelligence and comparative market analysis ended up presenting to them.
And the fact of the matter is, the other agent came in there and they're like, whatever, okay, yeah, $850, got them the listing. Sign's been up there for over a year, flopping away at the wind, demonstrating to other potential sellers that they can't sell a house, which is never good to have your sign up on a main highway for a year or 2 or 3 demonstrating can't sell the house, even though it's not your fault. It's the vendor's fault because the house is overpriced. But where is the house a year or 2 down the road? It's $20,000 over where it should have been from the beginning if the home sellers would have looked at the factual data rather than just accepting the fact that an agent had an opinion, which may have been based on just trying to get the listing, knowing that they may be able to work that price down over the years, which they have and they do. Do not tell your agent, well, I'm going to talk to 12 different agents and see what prices they come up with. I had this conversation 3 days ago. I said, why would you do that? We're all using the same information. The product, the house that we're looking at is not difficult to put a value on. You have all the sales data. There's nothing they can provide of value over and above the factual data.
Yeah, and I always liked your approach, Michael. You've always been very firm on do not pick your agent based on price. And you, I know in the past, have actually withheld and said, until you pick your agent, the one that you
pick
want.
Pick them on marketing.
Yeah, I'm not providing a number because that is something that's black and white. The market will speak to us. That's not the complicated part of the process. It's making sure that the agent that you're interviewing is going to do their job, and get the most amount of money that your property can deliver, provide, the market can pay for it in the reasonable amount of time that is obviously conducive and works for both parties' time frame with the least amount of, and I know you've used hassle, but the least amount of drama, because some can get a little bit.
Well, you don't want to use words like problem or aggravation because they're negative words. So when you're marketing, the marketing people, and we use multiple marketing companies and have in the past, they always say use something positive. So I think the word they came up with, it wasn't hassle, it was easily. They want to sell their house easily, which really means without the aggravation, without the drama, without all the stupid mistakes because you hired an agent that has no experience and they're tripping over their feet. The other thing you want is you want maximum dollar, and you want to do it typically in the least amount of time as possible. That's what people are looking at. Again, I'm not making this up. This is according to the National Association of Realtor, NAR, N-A-R, says that's what buyers are looking for. Quick sale, top dollar, no aggravation.
Yeah, so pick your realtor based on their skill set, not the price, because at the end of the day, the market is the market and it's going to speak to us. And as long as you are being provided accurate information and data, it shouldn't be very complicated. There's a range. If there's not a lot of comparables, you will have to, and again, I've just finished a course with some new lingo and terminology, but you would be provided a more of an expansive price range.
Well, you're going to do a reverse auction. If you can't pin it down to a few grand, you're going to do a reverse auction. You're going to start high. You're going to test the market and see if there's any showings, offers, feedback,
Yes. And if there are comparables and you feel more confident in this range, you give what's called more of a compressed range because there's enough data to be able to support, here's a tighter range that your property falls within. And if there's not, because you're a unique property, which everyone seems to think that they are, my property is unique, there's nothing like it. And if that is the case and true, there's going to be a little bit more of a price range gap.
And that's why it's nice to hire an appraiser too. In fact, professional real estate people, including myself, I may hire 2 or 3 appraisers to look at a property. And they don't really care about your feelings about, I got the nicest views, it's the best builder, best floor plan, it took me 12 years to design the kitchen. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is age, location, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, foundation, condition. Is it waterfront? Is it not waterfront? And they're going to put a value on it. And if you hire 3 appraisers and you do not give them instructions as to skewing the prices higher or lower, banks will typically tell them we want a price to sell within 60 to 90 days. You can tell them that. They will typically come up with values that are fairly synonymous.
Yes, I would agree.
But the nice thing about an appraiser is they're not sitting there trying to kiss your boots, trying to get a listing. You're hiring an agent to price a house. You're kind of letting the fox into the hen house, per se, because you're hiring someone that could potentially be prejudicial.
Yeah, and somebody that doesn't know how to make adjustments to perhaps the differences between the comparables that they're bringing in to consider what your property value is. That's a whole skill set in itself.
And the appraisers have to do, the last time I heard, 1,000 appraisals before they get their appraisal license, and it would be even more severe for commercial and other designations. So you're not just hiring someone that just got out of real estate school last week that had someone that has 40 years in the business that really doesn't know how to do a CMA. Train them. What?
Moving along.
Okay. What happens this time of the year, and Patty can explain this, why this is completely aggravating, counterproductive, and will allow you to probably get less money for your home, is the old, I'm going to take it off now in the winter and I'm going to put it back on in the spring. Well, what happens in the spring? You and every other person has the same mindset, and you've just created a pile of competitors for yourself, which in essence, based on supply and demand, will probably lessen the amount of money you're going to get for your house. Patty?
Yeah, and they will typically, so they get all excited. They think, I'm going to bring my property on in the spring. And then you think, oh boy, here we go. Okay. So whether they've taken their property off the market sometime November, December, you'll see a mass exodus of listings, the expired list on our hot sheet that I was referencing at the beginning. You see probably 20 to 30 properties coming off the market every day sometimes. So that's something that we sit there and we'll see that scenario. Or you have somebody that says, I don't want to bring it on until the spring because that's when it shows best. So guess what happens? Ring, ring. I call them. It is March 21st. It's the first day of spring. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I understand that you wanted to bring your property on in the spring. To get ahead of everybody, let's get the process started. Oh, no, there's still some snow outside. I think we're going to wait until, the grass is there and there's no more snow on the ground. Okay. Wait another couple weeks to a month. Call them up. It's the end of April now. Ring, ring. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just wanted to see if you wanted to get the process started. No, since it's now close to the end of April, we're thinking sometime at the end of May or beginning of June, because once the flowers start coming up, it really looks nice. Okay, so then you wait another month or two. And that's what ends up happening. That's the cycle that happens. And then there's all of a sudden a lot of properties that all present themselves because the tulips and daisies have popped out of the ground. We end up running off our feet because everyone wanted their property yesterday while the flowers appeared. And we are now running full stop here, trying to get everyone accommodated and fit in. Unfortunately, now the buyers have all these properties to look at, which that allows them a leverage position because now you're competing as a seller with all these other properties. And whether they're in your same neighborhood or there's a similar style or experience property on PEI, you've just set yourself up for failure and perhaps a little bit lower of a price point as a result of that. Now, over this past November, December, and now that we're into January 2026, I've had a few sellers that have decided, and that's just their mindset, and their mindset is made. The ones that have stayed on the market are going under contract. In fact, I cannot believe starting probably the last week of December and the first couple weeks of January, I've got showings going on almost every day on properties, and they're going under contract. So everyone that decided to pull their properties off the market when it's Christmas and they feel no one's out there looking, believe me when I say this is a busy time. And the reason the spring market is so busy isn't because you brought your property on in the spring. It's because those are the properties that stayed on the market in the winter, went under contract, and now they're closing in the spring.
I have two questions.
Go right ahead.
Are your home sellers really called Mr. and Mrs. Home Seller?
No.
I notice all the real estate training, they always refer to Mr. and Mrs. Home Seller. It's just kind of funny. One day you're going to trip across someone and they're going to say, "Hi, Patty, this is Mr. and Mrs. Home Seller," on their speakerphone. "We'd like to sell our house," and you're going to start laughing.
Yes, or Mrs. and Mrs. Seller, or Mr. and Mr. I didn't mean to give any labels like that, but the home seller
I have a
is what I'm-
second question.
Okay.
My second question is, so I decide to sell my house in November, December, January. Does that mean I'm packing the moving truck in the middle of a blizzard at the end of January? Or can I delay the closing and say till April or May?
Which is the spring closings. 100%, Michael, and thank you for pointing that out. You control, as a home seller, typically the closing. And as a buyer, don't panic and feel that if I offered today, I got to close during a snowstorm. You can set your closings for after March 21st or sometime in April, perhaps. The beauty of once the new year comes in, home sellers are typically more inclined to go, okay, as a result of you putting it under contract, I'm open to not having to, move as well during the winter. Let's set this closing for the second week of April.
The only thing to keep in mind without going down into the rabbit trail is your deposit should increase relative to the amount of time that the closing is out, and it should be non-conditional. In other words, if you're closing in a year, we're not doing $1,000 deposit, we're doing $100,000 deposit or whatever, 5 to 10% of the purchase price. If it's closing in a month, it's different. But the further you go out, the more you want to make sure that they have skin in the game so they're not changing their mind or walking away or life circumstances change. Or I had one client, the husband gambled away $700,000, which just happened to be their money to buy the house, so that didn't close. All kinds of these stories out there. So the longer you're closed, the higher your deposit. Moving along, I want to tell you a little bit of a story, Patty.
Okay.
I was developing a property, or I was involved with developing a property. It was several hundred acres of waterfront. And we're tootling around with the engineers doing soil tests. So we got an excavator, we're digging holes all over the place, trying to determine what the soil types are on this large piece of land, relatively speaking, in PEI to determine how we're going to design this subdivision. So I notice we're just sort of walking and they're pacing off, how far to the east and pacing off how far to the right, pacing off how far to the north and the south. And I said to the engineers, I said, why aren't you using a GPS so we can know within a few feet of where you are?
And what was the answer?
It's too accurate.
Really?
I'll let you think about that and ponder that statement. Which brings me to the topic. So the topic is Patty and I, actually it was Patty and I didn't bill you for this, just the many perks of being on the Michael and Patty podcast, bought a thermal imaging camera. The thermal imaging camera basically shows you in color the temperature variances when you pointed at somebody. For instance, if I pointed at Patty, her head's really hot because she's hot-headed.
I don't think so, but okay.
I'm kidding, of course. But basically, it shows you what you can't see with the human eye. And I've always wondered, why don't home inspectors have these things?
I don't know if any
it's
have
too
one.
accurate.
Okay.
What would happen if a home inspector walked into a house with thermal imaging cameras and said, basically every house you looked at needs insulation, or your pipes are broken in the in-floor heating, or the 100 other things? So we actually took this thermal imaging camera out to a site of a house. It was a bank foreclosure. It's pretty rough. And it was amazing what this thermal imaging camera showed us. It showed us windows in the walls that weren't insulated. So what they did is they drywalled over windows, but they didn't bother to insulate them. It showed us the in-floor heating abruptly just stopped, and 2 or 3 rooms in this house had zero heat whatsoever. It showed us certain parts of certain walls in certain rooms had no insulation whatsoever. It was a rainbow, literally, of information as to the viability of the heating of this home. Because the biggest concern I had with this home is it was all vinyled over, steel roof, drywalled. And as you know, you can't really inspect a home any more than you can inspect a septic system unless you started ripping walls off. How many houses have we seen covered in vinyl, and the frame in behind the vinyl is basically sawdust? The thermal imaging camera, if you have the ability to use one, and Patty and I do have one, allows you to see beyond the drywall, beyond the siding, beyond the roofing. And I think that was just an awesome demonstration of that tool. And what I suggested to the purchaser, which has since made an offer on that house, I believe.
Yeah, I believe they've made an offer. They're still negotiating.
I suggested to them to take the thermal imaging images, the photos, put those in the offer to demonstrate to the bank that you're sitting on a house that has a lot of issues, because I'm trying to advocate as a purchaser's agent that your valuation's too high based on the information I've discovered. I would also do a home inspection and a bunch of other stuff to build a case for the lower offer, because the bank just wants to get it off their desk. And if they can advocate their position, and I can help them with that, with these different resources, then it's going to make my job as a purchasing agent easier to get that offer accepted at a lower dollar value.
Okay, so one question, Michael, that I'm sure the listeners might have is, should they purchase a thermal gun? And if so, how much is it? Because by what you, in this situation that I know I was a part of, that we have experienced, this may end up costing this particular buyer, which they are aware of as a result now of this thermal gun, thousands and thousands of dollars in making perhaps some modifications and correcting some of the deficiencies. How much was the thermal gun?
I wouldn't suggest buying one. I would find a home inspector that has one. And if they don't have one, I would suggest to them that they do get one. Maybe not use it every single inspection. They maybe can use it as an option or whatever, because it can cause a lot of problems because there's no perfect house. And when you have a buyer looking for a perfect house, they're never going to find one, as we know, because we've had clients inspect 5 and 6 houses in a row and eventually buy nothing because they can't find the perfect house. I didn't do a lot of research on this. A lot of stuff I do is just, as you know, spur of the moment. I fight with analysis paralysis. I do not want to be one of these people that overanalyzes everything, even though I have the potential to do so. So I found a company called Flir, F-L-I-R. They seem to be the gurus or experts in this sort of stuff. The gun we bought was about $800. I'm sure it's not the best. I'm sure it's not the worst, but for all intents and purposes, for what we're doing, it has done a phenomenal job. They're not a sponsor of the show, but I would look at the Flir equipment, and they have stuff that's reasonably inexpensive that you can run on your phone, and then the sensor plugs into your phone, and that may be half that price. But again, to me, as a professional real estate investor, I look at all these things as tools I can use to negotiate the price down with factual data, and I use it as due diligence so I know what I'm really coming across, because I can't tell you how many cases I've seen where people have bought garbage properties that look amazing because of the vinyl siding, which covers up everything. And it's essentially, as we've said before, lipstick on a pig.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you want to make anything look good, put vinyl siding on it. It's cheap, looks good, you don't know what's behind it.
And you really don't, you're really trusting. And sometimes it's not even that particular homeowner that is aware of what's behind the siding. So getting a tool like the thermal gun or finding a home inspector that is able to provide that level of service to you might be very beneficial and may save you a lot of money, or at least make you aware of the projects that are going to be upcoming.
And ground penetrating radar, so you can check out the yard as well.
Okay.
It's one of the things they suggest to use if you're inspecting septic systems, ground penetrating radar. Patty, one of the things I come across is buyers and sellers that Google to look for a lawyer or a home inspector or an accountant. Don't do this. It may just show who's best at marketing their services. It may not advocate to who is the best at doing what they do in reference to real estate. So if I'm a buyer or seller of real estate and PEI, who should I talk to find an accountant, a lawyer, home inspector, plumber, electrician, HVAC guy, furnace tech?
I would be,
Painter,
yes,
landscaping, the whole kit and caboodle.
house cleaners. There's a whole list of services that you require as a homeowner to continue to maintain and be a steward of that home.
Do you keep a list of these people?
Yes, we actually have at our brokerage. We have a tradesman board and a transaction board that we share collectively as a team so that even a new agent that walks in the door is already equipped with basically a real estate business in the box. But your realtor should be able to provide, and again, we should be providing a few names based on, a lot of times, Michael, I will pick a few. I don't pick for my client. I will give them a few names who I know will speak perhaps the same language as my client and who also has a high skill set. So that is one thing that I would recommend. Now, let's say I gave 3 names to and one of my listeners. Here is looking to buy a property. My recommendation to you would be now to go on Google that at this juncture and see if they have a Google business page. See if they have Google reviews. Hopefully they're developed enough to be able to have some of those systems in place.
But that contradicts what we're saying, which is just ask your agent.
But the agent will end up providing a few names. There's a lot.
I don't like Google reviews. I
No?
apologize for interrupting you, but I think all these review sites are the same. You always get the friggin' squeaky wheel, the complainers, the people that felt they were done wrong, or once, probably the 1% is you got someone providing a service that goes out of their way to get all these 5-star reviews. But I find for the most part, people will go out of their way to complain, but they won't go out of their way to say good things. Would you contradict that?
Yeah, I kind of would.
So I would talk to the agent.
Well, the agent is a great resource, but I would follow that up. And I personally would be doing that. If I was buying a home in somewhere else in North America, I would be trusting my realtor 99%. And then I would be doing my own due diligence, whether it's Google review, whether seeing what kind of social media presence they have, what kind of services, what kind of conversation I had with them on the phone. I price is an element. I mean, are they charging 100% above everyone else? Are they reasonably priced with the expectation and service of what I want? And again, you might pay a little bit more if you want a home inspector to have the tools like a thermal gun to be able to perform a home inspection at a higher level. So realtors should, but again, Michael, we discussed at the very beginning, some may not have the experience and the resources around them. They may be able to say, I've been in the business 10 years, but they've only done a few transactions and have a very small team around them, team being lawyers and home inspectors and things like that. You really need to ensure that your first stop is to trust the realtor and feel confident in the one that you're hiring, because if they're qualified and they've done their transactions and are considered a professional, a master in the industry, for themselves, then they should be directing you in the right direction for a good lawyer. A lawyer maybe that's familiar with some of the services that you may need, because there's also specialty things when buying properties on PEI that a lawyer should have some experience in order to set that client up for success, as well as the home inspector. Do you have anything to contribute to that?
I think you've done a great job. So it all gets back to hiring the proper agent, just not dealing with the agent that you just happen to come across because you're driving down the street and you saw a for sale sign. I'm going to let you address this and then get into the toolboxes on our Facebook group. What do you do with these people that say, I've been watching this property?
I'm not going to read what you wrote there, but...
Get out your ass, get off your ass, fly out and see the property. That's what I wrote there. This is transparency. What I find, it's just it's so annoying. You'll have these people that have never been to the island, and they'll send you a list of 25 questions on a property, not knowing it could take you 2 weeks of back and forth with the homeowners. And then if you don't answer the questions, they get all snooty, and it's like, if you're not going to answer the questions, I'm going to find another agent. Like this sort of stuff, right? Like if you're that serious, fly out here, take a look at the property.
Yeah.
Or do a virtual showing.
I'm okay with, again, a couch shopper from another province who's trying to prepare themselves. Or state to what their options are on Prince Edward Island. But there does come a point where the questions start to get a little too in-depth.
Mind-numbing.
And at that point in time, because, and again, in defense of the buyers that are feeling like they're doing a good job for themselves, protecting themselves, like you pointed out, each one of these emails, and if we get even 10 of these emails or 5 of these emails a day, and it takes us a good hour or two, we're not servicing our sellers. We're too busy answering all these questions. And majority of the time, these buyers never buy the property they're asking the questions and sending the email on.
And then what we have is a home seller that's wasted hours and hours of their time. A lot of times, can I see electrical bills? What do they pay for telephone? What do they pay for insurance? What do they pay for propane? What's this? What's that? Do you have a picture of the doorknob in the kitchen? And they do all this, and then they're like, where did these buyers go? We just wasted a bunch of our time. The agents list wasted a bunch of their time. And then you've got a buyer, and I love this aspect. You send the email back, and then you get no response.
Yeah, you don't even get a thank you.
So if you're one of these buyers, please deal directly with Patty.
No, just know it is very time consuming. Ask your basic questions, that I understand. I moved across Canada a couple times. I know what it feels like. It's unsettling. There's anxiety. the stress of it all, the anticipation, not wanting to make a bad mistake for my family. And so I know the pressures involved. However, make sure that you keep your questions simple and you plan your trip, which is exactly what I did. So we're wrapping it up here with a feature that we're going to start doing is as a result of the Facebook group that we mentioned at the beginning for the Moving to Prince Edward Island from the Michael and Patty podcast, we're going to feature every episode. One of the highlights of this Facebook group is the Toolbox Tuesday. So the one that I'm going to feature today is closing do's and don'ts and smart do's. Things that you should never do on closing day and things that you should do. So on closing day, never let a buyer move their belongings in before the funds transfer. Instead, wait for the lawyer's confirmation and then the keys from the agent when you as a seller know that the funds are either in your lawyer's trust account or they're in your bank account. Don't let them move in. It can become a complete nightmare, especially if this buyer, because you're trusting the situation and the scenario, and we don't know exactly why this isn't closing on closing day. There could be some extra things that maybe the buyer's lawyer is holding back out of protection and confidentiality of their client and hoping that it'll close in the next 24 to 48 hours. Black and white, don't let a buyer move their belongings into the home before the funds transfer. Never pop back in or throw a party after you've moved out, the final walkthrough has been completed, and you're waiting as a seller for your lawyer to tell you that the funds have transferred hands and it's officially closed. Please don't think I'm joking. This has actually happened to me. I was representing the buyers, and if you're a buyer that this story aligns with and you know, and you've worked with me, you'll know exactly who you are that I'm referring to right now. This poor family was moving from one side of Prince Edward Island to the other. They didn't get to pick up their keys until closer to 5 o'clock. It was an hour drive to their new home. And it was sometime around 6:30 or so that they pulled up, which should have been a joyful moment. And the sellers, who I was not representing, was throwing one last hoopla and party with their family to celebrate the closing of their property that they no longer owned. Never skip the final walkthrough, even for land. Make sure that you go through, you check out the property, whether it's a residential cottage, house, structure, or a piece of land, especially items like waterfront properties, because you could get neighbors clearing trees, dumping debris, a whole bunch of unfortunate things could happen. So be mindful of that. Never wait till closing day to set up your power, internet, or heat. These are all things that should be done before closing day because you've just added, some cases, a week or two in extra hookup costs. The last one I'm going to point out is never ghost your lawyer or agent on closing. Don't assume the final walkthrough is done and you get to move on and focus on other things, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Usually the buyers stay a little more diligent on top of this, but if you're a seller and you assume everything is fine, keep your phone close by you, keep it charged. The battery dying is not an excuse. And try to make sure that you stay in areas in the vicinity of cell service. And again, this comes from an actual true story. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, PEI's real estate podcast that helps guide and navigate you through the buying and selling and everything Prince Edward Island. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening, tuning in, and those who are members of our Facebook group.
That's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you on future podcasts.
Have a great day.